One. So today we'll be looking at the Free Standard Bank aptitude test. Please note that the difficulty of your test will depend on the role that you're applying for. For example, if the role that you're applying for requires a high aptitude in terms of mathematics, then your numerical reasoning test will be more difficult, and same applies with the other tests that you'll be getting. Okay, so this is our first question. Okay, to answer these kinds of questions, then you need to look at the behavior of the patterns within the boxes. Looking at this one, okay, we see we've got this shaded shape, and we also have a rectangle here. Okay, firstly, we can look at the shaded arrow. Okay, we can see, okay, in the first diagram, the arrow is shaded. Then in the second diagram, it has shifted one block to the right, and it's also unshaded. And then in the third diagram, it has moved to the left and it got shaded again. And then on the fourth diagram, it's unshaded and it's moved back to the right. And on the fifth diagram, it has moved back to the left and it's shaded, meaning that in the sixth diagram, it's going to move to the right and it will be unshaded. Okay, and then looking at our options, we can see that leaves us with options C and D. Okay, and then the second structure to look at is the rectangle. So we can see in the first diagram, the size of the rectangle is medium. And then into the second diagram, it becomes large, then becomes small, and then medium, and then large. Then meaning that after this one, after the fifth diagram, it's going to become small again. Then looking at our options C and D, D is the one that contains a small rectangle. So our answer will be D. Okay, and then moving on to question 2. Okay, it says which of the boxes comes next in the sequence. So we do something similar. Okay, we can look at the arrow pointing down first in terms of behavior. Okay, we can see in the first diagram, it's there. In the second diagram, it's not there. In the third diagram, it's there. The fourth diagram, it's not there. And then in the fifth diagram, it's there, meaning that in the sixth diagram, it's not going to be there. So that leaves us with B and D as our options. Okay, and then looking at the second diagram, can see, okay, the diagram we have here is not shaded. Then the second diagram, okay, the shape we are given is shaded. And then in the third, not shaded. Fourth, shaded. Fifth, not shaded. Sixth, we need to have it shaded. Then we can see that between B and D, the one that's shaded is D. So our answer will be D. Okay, and then looking at question 3. Okay, we can start with, okay, the line as our point of observation, or as the shape that we are looking at firstly. Okay, so we can see in the first diagram, it's slanted, okay, from the bottom left to the top right. Then it becomes straight horizontally, and then it's slanted from the top left to the bottom right, and then it starts the whole pattern again. In terms of, we have bottom left to the top right, and then straight horizontally, meaning that the sixth one will have to be from the top left to the bottom right. And that leaves us with option C and E. Okay, and then the next one will be, okay, we can look at the shape. Okay, we can look at the triangle. Okay, so the triangle is shaded in the first diagram and then not shaded, and then it becomes not shaded again, and then it becomes shaded and then shaded again, meaning that following the pattern that we are seeing here in the sixth diagram, it will have to be not shaded. Okay, and then looking at C and E, that gives us option C as our answer. Okay, and then question 4, we've got, okay, within our diagram, we've got a rectangle, okay, and the shape. Okay, then we can look at the rectangle first. Okay, firstly, we can see that it is not shaded in the first diagram. Then in the second diagram, it's shaded and then it moves to the middle. And then third diagram, the rectangle is not shaded and it is moved to the left. And then in the fourth diagram, okay, it becomes shaded and it starts over where it started, so it's at the right. Then it comes to the middle again, and then meaning that here on the sixth diagram it will have to be shaded and to the left. So that gives us options B and E as our possible answers. Okay, and then looking at the shape at the bottom, you can see that it's shaded in the first diagram, then it moves to the middle and it's not shaded, then it moves to the right in the third diagram where it's shaded, and then it starts back at the left whereby it's not shaded, and then moves to the middle where it's shaded. Okay, and then in the sixth diagram it will have to be not shaded and it will also have to be on the right. So that gives us option E as our answer. Okay, so the next question is this one. Okay, we can see that in the first diagram we have this house shape and it has a circle inside. Okay, we can look at the patterns inside first, and then afterwards we'll look at the house shape diagram. Okay, so we can see we have in the first diagram we've got a circle inside. In the second one we've got a rectangle, and then in the third one we've got an arrow, and then we get the circle back and then the rectangle, meaning that in the sixth diagram we will have an arrow. Okay, and that leaves us with option, okay, it only gives us option E, so E will be our answer. Okay, so for question 6, okay, we can see in the first diagram we've got a hexagon, and then second diagram we've got a square, then a hexagon, square, hexagon, meaning that in the sixth diagram we will have a square, so that gives us options A, C, and E. Okay, and then we can see we've got okay, the patterns for the shaded and non-shaded. We've got shaded, shaded, non-shaded, and then shaded, shaded, meaning that the last one has to be non-shaded, meaning that, okay, we can cancel E out as an option. Okay, and then the last thing we look at is the movement of the shapes. We can see that from the first diagram to the second diagram, the shape has moved down. Okay, and then moving to the third diagram, it has shifted one step to the right, and then shifted one step up in the fourth diagram, and then shifted one step to the left in the fifth diagram, meaning that it has to shift one step down in the sixth diagram. So that leaves us with option C as our answer. Moving on to question 8. Okay, we can see in the first diagram we have 2 shapes. Okay, and then in the second diagram we've got 3. Okay, so we can just look at the changes of the cycles for now. Okay, we can see in the first diagram the cycle is not there, in the second diagram it's there, in the third diagram it's not there, fourth it's there, fifth is not there, and then sixth, that means it has to be there. Okay, and then we can see that it's there in all our solutions. Okay, so the next thing to look at would be, okay, the shaded triangle. So with the shaded triangle, okay, also with, okay, we can see that it's moving simultaneously with the non-shaded one or the slim one. Okay, so we can see that they're actually moving clockwise. Okay, so we'll just follow the movement of the shaded one. Okay, so here it moves to the right, and then in the third diagram it moves to the bottom, in the fourth diagram it moves to the left, and in the fourth diagram it moves to the top, meaning that in the fifth diagram it has to move to the right, the top right. Okay, so that gives us options D and E as our possible solutions. Okay, and then looking back at the cycle and its movements, okay, we can see that from diagram 2 to diagram 4, okay, it moved from the bottom left to the top right, meaning that the next movement will be to the bottom left. So that gives us option E. Okay, moving on to question 9. Okay, so we can look at the horizontal line first, the shaded horizontal line first. Okay, so we can see that, okay, it's horizontal in the first diagram, and then, okay, it moves clockwise by 45 degrees into the second diagram, and then in the third diagram it moves by 45 degrees again and becomes vertical. That moves by 45 degrees again in the fourth diagram, and then 45 degrees again in the fifth diagram, then meaning that in the sixth diagram it's going to move by 45 degrees, meaning that our options will be A. Our possible answers will be A and D. Okay, the next thing to look at is, okay, we can look at the cycles inside. Okay, so we can see we have the cycle in the first, okay, we have 3 blocks here. I'll just call them blocks. Okay, so we have it in the first block, and then it moves to the second and moves to the third, then it moves back to the first and then the second. Okay, and then it has to be in the third one, and in the sixth option that gives us option A as our solution. Okay, moving on to the last question. Okay, we have 9 boxes. Okay, and then only 2 are shaded. All right, and then, okay, if we look at all the shapes that are occurring, like looking at the whole sequence, we can see that we have a total of 3. which is the shaded square, which is, okay, the black square, the gray square, and the shape that looks like an oval, which is also in black. Okay, so the first thing we can look at in terms of movements is the gray tile. Okay, so with the gray tile, we can see that it's here in the first diagram and it's not here in the second diagram. And then it moves straight 2 blocks up in the third diagram. Okay, and then it's not here in the fourth diagram, and then in the fifth diagram it moves 2 steps to the left. Okay, and then in the sixth diagram, looking at the pattern, it's not supposed to appear. Okay, so that gives us options B and E as our possible solutions. Okay, the next thing to look at would be, okay, the oval. Okay, with the oval, looking at the last 4 blocks, we can see that it appears, but it was not appearing in the first diagram, meaning that, okay, it could be that, okay, the oval was actually here, but then it was overlapping with another shape. So we can assume that, okay, at the moment it's overlapping with the black square. So in the first diagram, the oval will be on the top left corner. Okay, and then in the second diagram, it moves 1 step to the right. The third diagram, it moves 1 step to the right again. Okay, and then in the fourth diagram, okay, it has moved 1 step to the right, but then the right falls into the next row, so it starts in the first tile of the middle row. Okay, and then in the fifth diagram, okay, it moves 1 step to the right, meaning that in the sixth diagram it's going to move 1 step to the right again. Then between B and E, that gives us B as our solution.